Rising tensions with North Korea. The Kim Jong-un regime is now calling yesterday's ballistic missile firing over Japan a, quote, meaningful prelude. The country promising more launches in the Pacific and an apparent threat to the U.S. territory of Guam. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley strongly condemning the Hermit Kingdom following yesterday's launch.
No country should have missiles flying over them like those 130 million people in Japan. It's unacceptable. They have violated every single UN Security Council resolution that we've had. And so I think something serious has to happen.
Meantime, the U.S. tested its missile defense system overnight off the coast of Hawaii, successfully shooting down a medium-range ballistic missile. Joining us this morning is the Trump administration's Chief of External Affairs for AmeriCorps, former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie. President Trump says all options are on the table. Carl, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I could say, with AmeriCorps, we've been primarily focused on the hurricane, so these are, my personal opinions. But I tell you, something's got to be done here. And the thing that people aren't looking at is the fact that the Olympics are being held, 35 miles south of the DMZ in the next, couple months. What are we going to do about that, and is it going to be safe?
Carl, one of the things we've seen this administration, as Kevin Kelly, do is they've been focused on sanctions and really the Chinese to come around and also push the North Koreans to stop this provocation. What do you think the next best step is? Is it to sanction the Chinese banks and try to do an all-out sanctions as much as possible, or where can we go from here? Because they haven't launched a missile over Japan since 2009, and they're starting to escalate even further now.
So here's the thing with China is it's an interesting dynamic, as you guys probably actually know better than me, is that, economically that could be mutually destructive to, trade policies we have with them. And I don't know if sanctioning Chinese banks could be the answer here. I think this is going to be something that we have to look at. And like the president said, all options are on the table. This is the first president we've had in a while who's been willing to say, we're not giving you a plan, and all options are on the table. So, I think General Mattis, or Secretary Mattis right now, has a monumental task on his hand on how to play this, because it's a very closed regime. It's one of the few ones in the world that we don't have enough intel inside to work off of and find out where the exact targets are.
Carl, the Wall Street Journal actually has an editorial about this very subject today, nuclear missiles over Tokyo, and how Japan might respond. The Wall Street Journal writes, Japanese leaders have long resisted building their own nuclear arsenal, but that could change if they conclude that America isn't reliable in a crisis. This prospect should alarm China, which would suddenly face a nuclear-armed regional rival. What do you say to that?
This is quickly spiraling out of control, and this is policies of the past administration that failed to put this in check. I've heard the media blaming this on President Trump and his rhetoric. No, that's not it. This is a plan that was, they failed. America and the rest of the world, quite frankly, failed to really honestly put North Korea in some sort of place where they couldn't achieve this, and we just didn't do it. So now President Trump, it lands on his desk, and if we have nuclear weapons aimed at each other over in the Asian region, this is not good. When America drops off the stage, as we did for the last 8 years, to become, to step back, the world is not as a safe place.
Carl, Aaron Elmore here. Good morning. Ambassador John Bolton said yesterday that there are limited diplomatic options left. Do you see it that way?
Yes, I do. We sanctioned them. We took away essentially a third of their economy on the export-import side with coal and things like that going to China. It didn't work. And the problem is the country is so poor that people are eating bugs and frogs in the street. And any sanctions we put on them takes even further resources away from his people, and he just re-engages it to his military complex. I can't see any other options other than militarily here.
Carl, Kirsten Hagland here. Thanks for this insight. It's obviously important, and I think all of us continue to look at the North Korea situation and just say, what more is it going to take? What is going on? But, I'm curious, in light of the Afghanistan speech last week by the president and all this focus on trying to, yes, of course, and trying to secure and stabilize the Middle East and that country in particular, and for the people there who are struggling with, very similar things as those in North Korea, what is our true capacity as an American military to potentially handle wars or conflicts on two fronts? We haven't really seen that since World War II. What is the state of the military insofar as readiness if there is some kind of military option to be taken in North Korea?
Well, having served, 9 years in the military, I think the U.S. soldier is the most lethal weapon the world has ever known, and we're always ready to answer the call. The issue is how, we have families too, and the constant drumbeat of the longest war in history, expanding areas of operation, is taking its toll, and we're going to need to risk I say any advice to Secretary Mattis, who obviously knows the situation very well, but we will need to pick our conflicts, essentially, in the upcoming thing. That said, Afghanistan, the president was right. Just pulling out and creating the power vacuum is a real problem. So we need to do that very carefully. Otherwise we might have some risk of fatigue on the force. But right now, I can say the U.S. military is anxious and willing to take on any task from the executive branch.
Carl, speaking of the U.S. military, it was something that I talked to General Jack Keane about yesterday. Let's talk about the storm Harvey, what's going on down in Texas and Louisiana in terms of the recovery efforts there, particularly your involvement with AmeriCorps. Right. The Pentagon said yesterday that an additional 30,000 troops are ready to assist, in addition to, I think there are already 12,000 just in the state of Texas that have been at the ready and deployed.
Yeah, and thank God. And to be honest, because of a little bit of public profile, I have National Guard troops reaching out to me personally saying, what can we do more? We're on standby. We're not doing anything yet. We'd love to help out just on the AmeriCorps front. And I said, right now, we're telling people to hold in place, wait for the waters to recede. We have never, there's insurance companies right now that, hey, you have to get your insurance claim in by September 1, or we're not going to cash in on it. Well, and that's based on a policy because most storms don't last this long. The floodwaters don't stay high this long. So we're working right now on all fronts. We say nobody should go in there at the direction of anybody but the local and federal authorities at this point. And then the National Guard is going to be a massive help. I know AmeriCorps right now, we have 300 people on the periphery of the storm helping with the shelters. We have an additional 700 plus that are in staging areas prepared to go whenever we let them go.
With these insurance companies, are you calling them out saying, hey, basically representing the very people who have insurance with these companies to say this is unacceptable? Are you working the phones and putting pressure on them to do right by those people in these storm-ravaged areas?
I'm not personally, but I would encourage them to look at any, basically an archaic policy that says, it's like if you get into a car accident, most insurance companies require you 24, 48 hours to report it. Same thing with these guys. And it's not like they're not trying to screw people out of stuff, I don't think. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to institute a policy based on previous storms where you were able to get back in 72 126 hours later. You can't do that in this storm. So I would urge people to reach out and any avenues we have to say, hey, look, it's going to take 2-3 weeks for some of these people to get back to their properties.
Right, and we encourage our viewers, if they know of problems, whether it be big or even small and individual, to tweet us at Mornings Maria, and we'll bring our power to bear, so to speak. Thank you, Carl. It was great to see you, Carl Higbie. Always a pleasure.